Welcome, everyone. My name is Sandra Reimer, and I work with TourMagination on their communication. Before we start the webinar about our Belize Beauty, Birds, and Culture Tour with Mark McReynolds, I want to tell you a little bit about our presenter. Mark's love of people and God's creation comes from travel in 22 countries, plus 14 years of camping ministry, 7 years of university teaching, an MDiv, a PhD, and licensing as an eco-pastor by the Pacific Southwest Mennonite Conference. Mark has led many groups in Belize with his wife Karen as co-directors of Jaguar Creek from 2000 to 2004. Scarlet macaws were the focus of his doctoral research in Belize, and he co-led a birding tour there in March 2018. Not retired, he is serving Mennonite churches and leading a SoCal Arosha, a new ministry of Arosha, a Christian conservation organization. Mark, welcome, and we're looking forward to hearing more from you.
All right. Well, hey, welcome. I am excited to do this. This technology stuff is kind of fun. I often do meetings with Zoom or something similar to that. And there isn't any reason why we can't do webinars like that too. So I'm excited to be here. I'm out of Fullerton, California. That's where I live. I imagine I'm warmer than some of you are. Belize is even warmer, and it's a primary reason why people go there, because it is warm. And in January, I can guarantee you that it will be warmer than anywhere you come from in from North America. So, welcome, and I'm going to be going through the show here, slides. This is basically me going through the itinerary in broad strokes so that you will be able to see in general what we're going to be doing. I'm very happy to answer questions, so if you want to jot those down, send them off to Sandra or email TourMagination. I'm sure that we can get those questions answered. So let's start. This is a map of Belize. You might want to pull one of those up at some point, not necessarily right now, but later to kind of study where all these things are. But you're going to fly into BZE, otherwise known as the Belize International Airport at Ladyville. It actually isn't in Belize City, just outside, like many airports. So you're going to fly into there, and we're going to go through Burrell Boom, right up there, down to Hattieville, across through Belmopan, which is the capital, and I'll say more about that, and then out to Jaguar Creek. So we're nowhere near the beach at that point. We are in the middle of the jungle. All that, I don't know how long your flight will be, but from the airport to Jaguar Creek, be about an hour and a half, something like that. Hopefully we'll arrive just before dark. Dark is about 6. So we'll see how that works. Sometimes folks get there when it's dark, and then they wake up and it's like, ooh, this is fun. Get to see everything. On to the next piece here. This is Jaguar Creek. This is the main office. Karen and I were co-directors of Jaguar Creek for 4 years, from 1980 to 1984. And then I also spent about a year and a half down in Belize and would occasionally go by Jaguar Creek then. We have a lot of connections with Jaguar Creek because of that. We helped build the office that you're looking at there on the screen, and have very good memories of it. We go back there often. Both my wife and I are of the opinion we could probably lead a trip next week. It's not that big of a deal for us. my wife is actually taking a group of students there this May, May 2019. So it's a warm place in our hearts, and I think once you see it, you're going to really enjoy it as well. So that's the main office. This is probably the major boardwalk that goes off to cabins with the green roofs there. You can tell by the palm trees and luxurious vegetation that we are indeed in the jungle there. And our next spot there, whoop, I skipped one. Let me back up. There we go. Is the cabins. So those green roofed cabins all have tin roofs. And what we're looking at here is a basic room. Often they'll have 2 beds. You'll notice some kind of funny white stuff hanging over the bed. That is mosquito netting. In January, it probably won't be much of a problem at all. My wife and I really enjoyed December and January in particular, because it was the coldest, least amount of bugs, very generally dry weather as well. So it's a great time to go when we've got things scheduled right now. You might notice in the back, there are some windows. Those are not glass windows, those are screen windows. So it's actually kind of like you're living outside. Whatever the temperature is outside is also what it is inside. And in the tropics, that's okay. I know it's not up in Canada or the Northeast US. Not shown, but in each of the cabins is a bathroom, shower, sink, flush toilet. And that's an improvement because they used to be compost toilets. So that's a room. And let me go to the next slide here. Right, there we are. So jaguars. You're not going to see one probably, which is a good thing probably as well. They're gorgeous. This is probably taken in the zoo. There's a cool zoo. There are 5 different kinds of cats outside your cabins. They're not going to come inside your cabins. They're not at all interested in eating you. Jaguar is one of them, although the only time you would ever see one is at night. They're nocturnal, and generally speaking, we're inside at night. And then the other thing is, I am not aware that anyone has ever seen a jaguar at Jaguar Creek, although they are around. There are also pumas, or what we call mountain lions, ocelots, and margays, and we may see a jaguarundi, which is a small black, almost house cat sized felid or cat. And it's out during the day. So we may see it run across a road or something like that. So those things are, the jaguarundi is possible. The others are really unlikely. This is the creek of Jaguar Creek. This is a wonderful spot. This is why Jaguar Creek facilities are where they are. Off to the right, there is a cave, as in a hole in a cliff, where water's coming out, and it is really, really nice. It's cool. It's super clean, and you can sit in that and lower your body temperature on a really hot August afternoon, and it is really, really, really nice. It's kind of like the opposite of a hot spa, but of course that's what you'd want in the tropics. Jaguar Creek is also really interesting because it flows right by the spot that we can access really easily because of stairs. And then it goes maybe another 100 or so meters, and then completely disappears into another cave. And actually no one knows where it goes after that. that's typical of the entire area. It's all karst limestone, lots of caves, lots of rivers that appear and disappear, and this is one of them. So it is a great piece of Jaguar Creek. Another great thing about Jaguar Creek is the birding. I am a bird nut or bird nerd, or in England, I think they call them twitchers. I list birds kind of like people collect stamps or coins. You don't have to in order to go on this trip. We will be doing some birding, but almost all of it is optional. And a whole lot of it happens early in the morning, since the early bird catches the worm, kind of a thing. So we're going to be out early looking for birds. A lot of people want to see parrots and toucans. And if you're out in the morning with me, it is likely that you're going to see those kinds of things at Jaguar Creek and perhaps other places as well. So this is an example of what you might see. I happen to see this right off the boardwalk at Jaguar Creek. It was just sitting there. Let me take lots of pictures. They are really very pretty birds. Lots of really cool things down there. So that's why birds are great. And the other possibility is that you will see something else. This, if you had to kind of guess, you might say kind of looks like a raccoon. And in some ways, it is a tropical raccoon. This is called a quadrumundi. And last time I was there at Jaguar Creek, this quadrumundi was walking around on the boardwalk. They're not fierce or anything like that. I couldn't get real close. I have a nice, good, long lens on my camera. But they're actually really fun to watch. Other possibilities are armadillos and possums. They will most often go under the boardwalk. One very interesting story I remember, there were student groups down there when I was there. And one student decided to spend as much time as possible outside. And I would encourage all of the participants to do that as well. And the reason why is you see more things. Which is really fun. So this guy was out there all the time, and one day he saw an armadillo walk under the boardwalk. And so he got down on his belly and grabbed the tail of the armadillo, and the armadillo really couldn't do anything at that point, and showed people the armadillo. So I don't suggest you do that, but those are the kinds of things that could happen. No guarantees on that you're gonna go grab an armadillo. In fact, I'd suggest you not do that. We're going to go to church. This is St. Anne's Anglican Church, and it's in Belmopan. I'll explain a little bit about that. Belmopan is an inland constructed capital. The capital used to be Belize City, and it's right on the coast, very close to the water, and it would flood constantly just because of heavy rains. And then anytime they had a hurricane, it was really very problematic. So they actually, like Brazil, decided to move the capital inland. So Belmopan is a completely constructed city. It's quite small compared to Belize City. Most of the government offices are there, and I'd say at least some of the participants, members of St. Anne's Anglican Church, are probably in the government as clerks or other folks, and it makes for a very interesting worship service because many of them are professionals there. So the worship service is Anglican, so it's kind of liturgical, it's structured. One of the really interesting things about it, though, is there is a time for passing of the peace, and What that means is everyone kind of shakes hands and says hi and that sort of thing. But this is very different from what might happen in the States, because basically everyone goes around and shakes hands with everyone else in the entire place. And we're talking 125 people or something like that. It might take 5-10 minutes. So it's kind of like when the Belizean informal Caribbean culture breaks out. And it's, I think it's a really fun part of the service there. So that's St. Anne's. This is St. Herman's Blue Hole National Park. We'll be doing that while we're at Jaguar Creek. This is the same sort of thing as Jaguar Creek. If you're looking at that slide, there's a piece of that water that's darker blue. That's darker blue because that's the cave the water is coming out of. And that water actually flows from there to our right and goes back into a cave. And from there, we actually do know where that water goes. That water ends up at Jaguar Creek. So it's sometimes you can figure out where these things are and how they're connected. So this is a 20-minute walk from Jaguar Creek down a dirt road. We do have a path now as well. And the water is super clean, super cool. It's quite fun. Very, very nice. Next is a map of the general area that we are likely to be going into according to our itinerary. So at the far right, you'll see something that says JC. That's Jaguar Creek. You'll notice St. Herman's Blue Hole National Park is right next to it on the map. That's because it is. To the left of that, I've circled Armenia, and we'll talk some about that. To the left of that, just a little bit, and I didn't circle it, is Springfield. That's a old order Mennonite community that we'll be visiting. If you go back to Armenia and go straight up, that's Belmopan. Belmopan to Jaguar Creek is about 25 minutes to give you some sense of scale. And then from Belmopan, you'll notice a number of small cities and a yellow highway going off to the left. Go all the way down to the bottom left-hand corner, and you'll see another circle with the letters X and U. That's an abbreviation for Zunantanich. You'll notice if you look carefully, it's right next to the Guatemalan border. It is an amazing Mayan ruin, and there's another slide a little bit later on that describes that. On that same day that we go out there, we're also going to be looking at Spanish Lookout, which is the top, basically top left. And that is a more modern Mennonite colony, and also very interesting. So that's our map. And let's go look at all these places. So here's Zunantanich. It is gorgeous pyramids. There's one major one. There's another one that's a little bit smaller. You get there by going over the Mopan River on the auto ferry there, and they will let you walk anywhere you want to go. There aren't signs that say no. There's no ropes or chains or that sort of thing. So if you really want to, you can climb all the way up to the top and look out and see what's out there. It's quite fun. Good birds there as well. The young woman in the bottom is Rachel, our daughter, who did not want to go there when she was in junior high, but now is very grateful that we took her down there as a part of the family. So let's look at our next slide, which is Spanish Lookout. The Mennonites there moved from Mexico. They basically made an agreement with the country of Belize to basically be left alone, to be able to opt out of Social Security, opt out of the education system, and leave the police out of the colony as well. A few of those things have changed. But in return, the Belizean government said, well, yeah, we'll let you come, but you can't just do your agriculture for yourselves. You actually have to be producing stuff for the rest of the country as well. So the Mennonites that were there did that, and they converted what some would call a tropical hell into verdant farmland. So they are an agricultural powerhouse in the country. They've completely dominated the poultry and dairy business, and they make some really good ice cream that I'm hoping we'll be able to sample when we're there. Another trip we're going to be taking from Jaguar Creek is down to Red Bank. Jaguar Creek on the map is top left. There's an arrow that goes down to Dangriga, and from Dangriga, we're going to make a right down the Southern Highway to Red Bank. And Red Bank is a Mayan village. That's also the site, one of the sites that I did a lot of scarlet macaw research work for my PhD. So here's Red Bank Village, the soccer field, typical house there with palm thatch. The hillside there, scarlet macaws should be around, and we may actually see them up in the trees up there. If not, we'll look around a little bit in other places. To the right are two of my good friends there. I was able to stay in their house when I was doing my research there. That's Geronimo and Serafina, and a granddaughter, and I don't remember her name. But Geronimo is a Christian pastor of the church, one of the churches there. And Serafina is a super hospitable, great food, really very nice, warm Christian couple. And we should be meeting them and possibly their son, Chelso. So that's Red Bank Village. Armenia and Springfield, I should explain. Those are both fairly close to Jaguar Creek. Armenia was settled, was basically empty as far as people goes, empty land, and it was squatted on by refugees from El Salvador and Guatemala in the 1980s. If you remember anything about the 1980s and Central America, there was a lot of warfare going on in El Salvador, Guatemala, some in Nicaragua as well. And what happened is people fled those countries. If you were in Nicaragua, you went to Costa Rica. But if you were in El Salvador or Guatemala, very often you came to Belize. It was a safe country. And so what happened in the 1980s is there was this large influx of refugees into Belize, and it's basically changed the culture. The Belize used to think of itself as a Black Caribbean nation, like Jamaica or Haiti, and that's changed quite a bit. So like France, where you have, like Canada, where you have French as a second language. The second language of Belize is definitely Spanish, and is the first language for a number of people, although all the signs, all the government, all of the instruction in schools is in English. So that actually is one of the really nice things about Belize, is you don't have to have another language other than English in order to get around really well. So all these folks started Armenia and if they're refugees, they're really poor. Jaguar Creek helped the village do a number of things, from water to a community center to more school buildings. And I was, and my wife and I were a part of that, and really enjoyed that. Pathlight is the ministry that has kind of come out of Jaguar Creek. It's actually its own separate thing now. And what they do is they sponsor Belizean kids through their secondary high school education. There's a lot of extra fees associated with that aren't paid. And Pathlight helps folks do that as a part of their Christian ministry. So someone at Pathlight should be giving us a tour of Armenia, explaining that program. And it's a great example of helping out folks in the name of Christ. Springfield is not too far from there. And we may actually, this is Old Order Mennonite, we may actually see folks riding not quite the get up that you see in the sign there. Often they're enclosed because it's kind of rainy in Belize. But we'll often see folks going to town, Belmopan, in carts in their horse-drawn. So I hope we'll be able to go check out that colony of Mennonites as well. So here's another map to give you an idea of where we're going to go after Jaguar Creek. So if you start at Jaguar Creek, which is the bottom left corner, we're going to go up to Belmopan. From Belmopan, we're going to be following the arrows all the way up to Crooked Tree. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a bit. From Crooked Tree, we'll go to Belize City. We'll get on a water taxi, which is actually rather fun. They're big outboard boats with huge motors, usually 2, sometimes 3. And they carry people. Sometimes they carry refrigerators. Kind of depends on what folks want to move that day. So we'll get in one of those. And we'll go to Caye Caulker, which is the CC up here at the top right. We'll do some wonderful snorkeling there, enjoy the beautiful beaches, and thoroughly relax there. And then after that, short flight to Ladyville and the Belize International Airport. And then from there, sorry, but you got to go home. So that is a map that shows the kind of the tail end of the trip. Bird's Eye View is a great place. I've been there several times. I went there the last bird trip I led. Folks are super nice. Food's great. And they're sitting right on the water. So it is a really it's a great place to be. Also really good for birding. So this is an example of the boat that we might be on. My son is on the top right there with the funny curly hair. My wife is behind the lady with the orange shirt there. And these boat trips are fun. You're not going to get seasick because there's no waves, and you're not going to get seasick on the water taxi either. These things are flying. We're not going to sit there and bob up and down for a long time. So why go out on the boat? Because it's a wildlife sanctuary, and there's all kinds of really cool things to see. So last time I went, I was particularly interested in birds. So I was taking pictures. Here's a bare-throated tiger heron actually sitting on a nest. The boat could get really close to it. I got some great pictures, and it's a really very interesting bird. This is another bird. Some people call this the Jesus Christ bird because it walks on water. It has got really big feet, and birds don't weigh very much, especially this one. So it can actually walk on lily pads on top of the water. And they're really brightly colored. My photograph isn't real great. There's a lot of purple in there too. But photo from the boat, a lot of fun, a lot of cool things to see in the boat trip. And this is one more thing that's likely that we're going to see. This is a green iguana. I know it doesn't look very green. This is a male. It's red. It's in breeding condition, if you will. That's about 4 feet long. They look really fierce, but they don't bother people at all. Actually, it's the reverse. People bother them. They're called jungle chicken by some Belizeans. And then the vermilion flycatcher is around as well. Lots of other migratory birds. This bird you can see in the United States, southern U.S. at least. Very pretty. And it flies down like we will to warmer climes in December and January in the winter. If you are into bird watching, even casually, you know that birds migrate from Canada and the eastern U.S. When it gets really cold. Well, Belize is one of the places that they go. So January, we're going to be seeing eastern and perhaps some Midwestern Canadian and some eastern U.S. birds down in Belize. So here's a blow up of the map, a little bit more extensive about where we're going after Bird's Eye Lodge. That's on the far left of the map. We're going to go down to pass through Ladyville and go to Belize City, which is at the bottom of the triangle there. Get in the water taxi, run on up to Caye Caulker. Caye Caulker, there's a map of it, or at least most of it, the tourist part of it, on the right-hand side there. It actually is not a big island. You can walk from one side to the other side, the skinny piece, in about 5 minutes. So it's quite small. It's very low. There's no mountains or anything or hills associated with it. Beautiful beaches, coconut trees, warm weather. And you'll notice in this far right, there's this thick blue line. That thick blue line is the barrier reef. Belize has the second largest barrier reef in the world. Great snorkeling, really amazing corals and fish, awesome, all sorts of really cool things to see. So, and the water is amazing. The water is, I mean, it feels like 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It's like bath water. So that's very fun to do that. So there's a typical Caye Caulker picture. You can see the white sand beach there. The water's fairly clear, and it's a little light blue, and then it gets darker blue further out. That darker blue is where the reef is. So Caye Caulker is one of several offshore islands. A lot of Belize's income as a country comes through tourism, and many people go to these islands. There is another island a little bit further north. That's kind of the ritzy place. You have lots of money and don't want to blow it. You can do that there. Caye Caulker is kind of the backpacker, free and easy place. It's smaller, it's easier to get around, and I just like the atmosphere a whole lot better. It's not the expensive tourist kind of stuff. So there's a number of different hotels there, lots of restaurants. There's things to buy all over the place, and it's a really fun place to be. So we've got that at the tail end of the trip. usually that's how I would run trips. We'd do the jungle stuff, maybe work projects or service projects, although you folks don't have to do any of that. And then we kind of reward ourselves by going out to the islands just before you go back home. And that's what we're going to be doing as well. So that's an example of the kind of things that you're going to be seeing snorkeling. And as I mentioned before, that water is really warm. And I'd like to put you in that picture. And I hope that you join us. And that is the last of the slides. So I think at this point, I'm ready for questions or that sort of thing.
It's great, Mark. Thank you so much for telling us all about the tour and what people can expect to see. It looks wonderful.
I'm really excited about it. That's, yeah, it's just fun.
Maybe you can just share briefly, do you know what the population of Belize is?
Population is about 325,000.
Oh, okay.
Which is super small.
Yeah.
It's the smallest population-wise nation in Central America. It's growing rapidly and a lot of that is because of the immigrants that came in the 1980s. These are poor farmers with having big families.
Right.
So the population is growing fairly quickly.
Okay.
But it's also a small country. It's about the same size as the state of Massachusetts. It's very easy to get around.
Yeah.
The farthest
Sounds like
we're going to go is about a 2-hour trip down to Red Bank, and that's a long way down there.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not going to be a lot of driving, but a lot of out in nature and being around, meeting people, seeing things, rather than lots of time in the car or the van, whatever we're taking.
Yeah, well, we'll have some of that just because we have to get places, but I don't like being in a van any more than necessary. I like being outside. That's one really different thing. When my wife and I were living there is you saw the screen windows. It really was like living outside. And when we came back, it was just so odd to go inside where everything was all closed up. So that will be a nice thing for you, I think, if you're used to everything all closed up in January because it's minus 50 degrees outside. You'll enjoy being able to be out in shirt sleeves and the general warm weather down there.
That's excellent. Well, thank you so much. And if anybody has other questions, we encourage you to give us a call or email us at TourMagination. We would be happy to answer your questions about the Belize Beauty, Birds, and Culture Tour. And if you're ready, you can just sign up.
Great. Thank you. Hope to see you.
Yeah, Mark, thanks again for your time. And thank you for watching, everyone. Bye now.
All right. Bye-bye.